Thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your busy day. I know this is a busy day for so many of us who work in the nonprofit space, but also folks who are participating in the conversations, who are sharing what they love about the organizations that they support and the causes that they care about. My name is Devin Desjardins. I'm Director of Marketing and Storytelling for United Way, and I am not the person you're here to see. Instead, I'd like to introduce Eric Guckian, who is United Way's President and CEO, who can go ahead and kick us off.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be with you, and happy Giving Tuesday. We're excited about this conversation and about your presence here today. Thank you for showing up and hopefully showing out a little bit. We want this to be a conversation, not a lecture, as the case may be. And we're really honored and privileged to have two community leaders here that will be a part of this conversation. Here's the framing of what we're trying to do today. We're going to have a pretty tight conversation here. It'll be about 30 minutes with 10 minutes for Q&A, but please feel free to jump into the chat or even raise your hand and ask a question yourself if you like. We want this to be open and an honest conversation. We've got two great leaders here today, Donna Carrington, who's Executive Director of Community Empowerment Fund, and Julie Wells, who's the Vice President of Strategy at the Durham Children's Initiative. And they'll tell you a little bit about their incredible work. They, like several of you on this call, and their teams are on the front lines of this pandemic. The work is hard, the work is meaningful, the work is impactful. And I'm in awe of so many heroes in our community, and Julie and Donna are certainly among them. At United Way of the Greater Triangle, it's been my privilege and our team's privilege to step in and help in the ways that we can amid the crisis here in the Triangle. And we've done that in a couple of ways. One, we've raised over $1.4 million for our Rapid Response Fund. And the thing I'm proudest of with the Rapid Response Fund is we worked with partners like Julie and Donna and their organizations to get a sense of what was going on the ground in real time and offer real-time funding through six rounds of investment. It's certainly not enough to solve problems, but it is enough to again, point the direction of where the needs are so that other philanthropies and other good people that want to invest and help know where to go. I think that's the value of this United Way and where United Way should be, is that we're offering a great platform for engagement. The other way that we're doing this is through what we do every day at United Way, and that's through our campaigns, our Community Impact Fund, Donna and Julie are both strong partners, as are many of you on this call. Because of the dollars that we're able to raise, that check comes every month. So that kind of stability has had an important stabilizing effect on our nonprofit community. So as we think about the pandemic and COVID-19, we are, of course, in a situation where the virus continues to rage. Particularly our low income and our Black and Latinx communities are adversely affected by this and disproportionately affected by this. And as this is happening, it's hard not to see right in front of you, and it's hard to be visionary. But we do want to think and talk about today about what this is going to look like, not just as we respond, but as we begin to recover and reinvent ourselves. So that's going to be a part of this conversation today as well, and something I encourage all of us to think about. So I'm going to move it now to the real stars of the show here. And Donna, I'll ask my first question directed to you. So again, this is Donna Carrington, Executive Director of the Community Empowerment Fund. Donna, can you tell us a little bit about what y'all do, and tell us a little bit more about how one-on-one interaction has been important for your team and members as some of the biggest needs that you've seen to emerge out of the COVID-19 crisis so far?
That's an interesting question for us. As an organization, right as COVID struck, we were going through an organizational change of going from a 3 co-director model to an ED model. And so that was the first thing that happened within the day I became the ED, the next day was COVID.
Oof, welcome aboard.
I think for us, the thing that I remember the most was we were now in a world of where everything we had relied on, except for our one-on-one relational model, we had to be flexible and rethink what we were going to do. Our model is based on one-on-one relational. We believe relationships are the way that creating trust and having empathy and providing resources are the way that we can work with people. And so to think that we weren't going to be able to do that in person was a really daunting thing to have to rethink. But what we've always done is cared about our community. So we reworked it so that we were calling and checking in on people every week. If people had questions or resources, we were also one of the major players that were providing resource databases that people could look up all kinds of things that they were needing. And we were maintaining that so that people had accurate and up-to-date information. We checked in on our members, but also as a staff, we really rethought what would it be like to have to think creatively about how we serve people. And so some of that meant that we were going to reopen our offices. That was never a question. And so we thought about, well, what would it be like to create safety? I am a research nerd, so I'm looking up everything to figure out how in the world can we do this and keep everybody safe? It is still a worry every day, all the time. However, we created offices very safe. People have temperature checks. We provide masks. We're cleaning in between every meeting. We're making sure that people are checking in about their own symptoms. We're saying to people, if you feel anything, please don't come in. It's okay. We'll figure it out. And I think that's been a real important change for our organization to understand that. I think we wanted to make sure that members got to see us in person, but we've also provided that people can do phone meetings. It is not the same as being in person, but for people that are high risk that need to be not being out in the community, this was a way that we could still continue to connect with people. I think a lot of the needs that we're seeing are probably the same needs that a lot of the people in this are seeing. People dealing with job loss, people dealing with, what do I do about rent? What do I do about utilities? How am I eating? And some of the ways that we have been looking at resources and connecting to resources so that we can have some of those answers for people, but also we have a food pantry that we're doing in our office to make sure people are getting fed, make sure people have access to that basic necessity. And, you know, we are looking at things in the future. But I think the major thing, we want to be there to be a support. We want to know what's going on in our community to have all the answers for people. And sometimes there may not be an answer. And if there's not, at least we've tried to do the research to figure out if there is. So I think that's
great. Donna, thank you for the work that you have done here in the last. I guess you can mark your tenure just as long as the as the pandemic has been upon us. So when we talk about frontline essential workers, I think sometimes we're not thinking about the nonprofit community as much as we should, and what you're articulating the risk that you put certainly you're being safe, but there's inherent risk in what you're doing, and it's heroic work. So thanks for putting yourself and your team on the line so that others that are in need can benefit. It's heroic work. Julie, I want to turn to you and talk a little bit about the Durham Children's Initiative and the great work that they did at the beginning of the pandemic. You all were really quick to create an infrastructure that could respond to the immediate needs of your families. And this includes all of the things that we know a family needs to not only survive, but thrive: food, rent, access to healthcare, computers and connectivity, really kind of round the world stuff. So I think sometimes when we think of the Durham Children's Initiative, we might think of an education organization. And this is a lot more than that. The other thing about the infrastructure is that you didn't do this alone. You did it in partnership with other organizations like Interfaith Food Shuttle, Diaper Bank, Porch Durham, and many, many others. And you created this support system for 100 families weekly. And at the height of this thing, and I suspect it might be creeping up, it was 275 families. Can you give us a little more perspective of how you did this and how you were able to do it so quickly, and how are you maintaining what you're doing? Just tell us a little bit about the great work you're doing, Julie.
For sure, absolutely. So, the Durham Children's Initiative has always been a collective impact model. It was designed to help create a pipeline of services of partners. And so, there was a historical context to the way that DCI works that really lended to our success in being able to transition so quickly. Another, interesting aspect of this time was that Partners for Youth Opportunity was beginning to merge into Durham Congregations to Durham Children's Initiative. And that allowed actually the strength of two organizations during those early days to pivot and combine our populations to be able to do the intense amount of work that we needed to do. The first and foremost, I think a lot of what we did was similar to Community Empowerment Fund in that we actually dug deep and just went and talked with our families about what they needed. Relationships can definitely be built in crisis, but your ability to impact communities, I think, is best suited when the relationship already exists. And our families at DCI trust us. They know that we care deeply for them. And so when we had to reach out and ask about their health, their safety, their food needs, their housing stability, we feel very blessed that they felt confident and secure to talk to us about those things. And therefore we could create interventions in response. Partners like Porch, Durham, and Interfaith Food Shuttle, gave us what we needed to get to our families in terms of food. We had transportation partners like the YMCA and other nonprofits that would come and help us deliver food to our families. We were very cognizant about the fact that we needed to be the face that was handing that food to our families, because for a lot of families, this was the first time that they had ever needed this type of support. And that's a really vulnerable place for folks to be. We, as a staff, really, like you said, Eric, we really put ourselves at risk as well. We were willing to go to people's homes, deliver computers, stand out, go to people's cars and give them food, mask, diapers, educational materials, whatever it took, but with a lens of knowing that these were our families, these were people that we loved and cared about, and we wanted to do whatever it took to keep them stable in a time when everything was up in the air, particularly for some of our families that struggled with documentation. Early March and April was a particularly difficult time, and there were seasons of this COVID crisis in Durham where 62% of the population that was testing positive for COVID were from the Latinx community, and DCI has a really a great stronghold in partnership with those families as well. So it took staff, it took relationship, it took partners, and it just took a level of intensity and a deep well of love for our families to make it happen.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Um, the trust aspect is just so important, and it's not something that, as you articulated, happens best in a hurry. It's something that needs to be cultivated. It's not always something that shows up on a metric sheet, but it's the straw that stirs the drink, as they say. So during the time when we launched, when we launched the Rapid Response Fund, we were, it was March, and we weren't sure what form this was going to take. And I remember getting a group of potential donors on the line, and they wanted to hear about, well, what is this going to be, and what are your metrics? And several of them asked those kind of questions. And I said, I have no idea. I just know that we're in a crisis here, and we need us to rally to support. And many of those donors and companies, some of which are on the line, did step up. Our community really rallied in support of the Rapid Response Fund and of the crisis at hand. And you both received, your organizations both received grants. And I'd be curious to hear about how those grants manifested themselves, and also just in general, beyond the Rapid Response Fund, just how some of the other support that you've received has been utilized, and how you've had to shift and change and react, because we were certainly reacting on this end. Everybody wants a plan, but there's no blueprint for this thing. So this is for both Donna and Julie. I don't care who goes first. Donna, why don't you go first?
Sure. I think about it this way. The first thing I think about is our staff was able to stay employed. We were able to be flexible and think about what our community needed, what our staff needed, which was really necessary at that point, as a lot of people around them were losing jobs and positions that they'd been in. I think it allowed for us to be more scrappy in our work of finding resources and connecting to people, and making sure that we had a space that people felt welcomed in because it was safe. So making sure that we had all of the things we needed, the PPE we needed, all of the cleaning supplies and things like that, so that people felt like, oh, this is a place I can go and I'm going to be safe and I can engage with people, has been really important. I also think back in the middle of all of this, to have an ED that also had COVID was an interesting experience for my organization, because I think the reality hit us very early that this was going to be something that could strike anyone. And so that made it even more important about what we were going to do and how we were going to do going forward, to make sure other people were safe and taken care of. And so that has been where our staff and our organization has worked. We've been good connectors to resources, both in Durham and in Orange County. We're out there, fighting for all of the things that our members can get access to. We're doing housing work, all of those things, to make sure that as we go forward, that we are helping our community.
We at DCI, we used all of our rapid response money for gift cards to be able to feed our families. Like Eric, like you said, at the height, we were feeding 275 families a week. And so we were able to get boxes of food from Interfaith Food Shuttle and from Porch Durham, but it was extremely important to us that we gave our families the autonomy to be able to purchase the food that they chose. What we received from Interfaith Food Shuttle and Porch Durham and other donations from local restaurants were all given with love, but there is no other, there's no replacement for a family being able to choose what it is that their child likes or what's culturally appropriate for them. And so those gift cards that we could add on top of to those boxes of food and those wrap sandwiches really, I feel like, again, played into the dignity that we wanted to give our families and being able to take care of themselves in ways that that they chose to. And because we had the food covered through the United Way, it allowed us then to use the donations we received from other corporate sponsors, as well as Duke University, to do more innovative things. We were able to pay some of our families to make masks so that we could help folks stay employed. We were able to create COVID packets so that when our families did become sick, we were able to take the supplies that they needed to them immediately. And then we were even able to do even more forward-thinking programs like the Frontline Fellows, where we took our most vulnerable populations, ages 18 to 24, and put them to work in local nonprofits to help build their capacity while also giving our young people an opportunity to earn income. So United Way helped us take care of our basic needs so that we could do more creative things with the other money we received.
Thanks to you both. Donna, thank you for sharing personally that that personal anecdote, and we're glad you're okay. And Julie, I think what you articulated is something we're very focused on at United Way of the Greater Triangle, and that's moving from a charity model to a justice model. And how do we empower our families and the folks that are closest to the issues to solve their own issues. So, the gift cards, it's interesting that came up. That's we had a partnership with McDougall Terrace and that community when that crisis hit in January. And, again, I think we in philanthropy and in the nonprofit space sometimes, get into this habit of thinking we know what's best for the communities we serve and we don't ask. And I think that we're moving in a different direction. And what you just articulated in those great ways in which you empowered and really, you got to give over the keys of these choices. And that's something we're used to doing. We're used to having boards and metrics, and those things are all fine, but we're not, I live just a few miles from McDougall Terrace, but I've never set foot in that place. Like, what do I know about that place? I don't know anything. So a willingness to help is not enough. We have to be willing to ask those questions and then let folks solve their own problems and figure out their own solutions. Very inspiring stuff. So I want to pivot now to talk a little bit about not just the pandemic as it was and as it is, but as we start to think about when we start to move from recovery and stabilization, what that's going to look like. And Donna, as you start to think about that from a community empowerment fund perspective, what role do you think you'll play in that process as we begin to move, God willing, out of this thing sooner rather than later? And again, it's hard to wrap your head around this right now, given the state that we're in. But I'm a hopeful person. I know we all are. We're going to get out of this eventually. And what is it going to look like from a community empowerment fund perspective?
I think it's going to be that people are going to need. So our model, I think, is something that is going to end up being beneficial for people, because we've always been thinking about this. We've always been thinking about what it's like for people to struggle. And so we're always thinking about what are the basic needs, what are basic information, what are basic resources that everybody has been looking for. People are going to need work towards employment. So they're going to need help with resume, cover letters, all of those things. People are going to need possibly to look for housing that is now within a new financial status that they have. And so we have the ability to be connectors and helpful in that. People are just going to need support, need to know that people are there to do some of the things that, some people might think are very mundane. And we're like, actually, sometimes people need support and help to do that. And that's going to be the place where CEF is going to be, is to be that place.
Thanks, Donna. Julie, how about from a DCI perspective?
Yeah, so, we like to think about, there's some of the wins that have come out of COVID. I think for us, particularly working with young, a majority of our population are young people, connectivity, the fact that we've been able to boost connectivity for so many young people and families is going to give them access in a way that they haven't in the past. And we're hoping that access is going to translate out to, particularly for young people, being able to take advantage of more opportunities. Internships can be virtual now. Transportation is less a factor in being able to give people opportunities. So we're excited about that. And we're excited about just what you just referred to, Erica, is just funders really understanding that we need to do things fundamentally different. Giving us as nonprofits the autonomy to ask for what we need, and also centering the work that we do around how people want to receive services is really, really important. The crisis will continue, though, we know, for young people in terms of social emotional health, and that's where we're really starting to lean into the disconnection that young people are feeling, the anxiety, the depression. And so our interventions over the next few months will center around social emotional well-being, and we will do some things internally as well. We just finished 2 weeks of training with the Center for Child and Family Health for all of our staff to upskill again on trauma-informed care, because our staff is also experiencing trauma, secondhand trauma. But I'm really excited about some of our upcoming partnerships. We're going to be working with Stand Up, Speak Out to facilitate some more groups for our young people who have experienced domestic violence during this time. We know that there's been spikes in domestic violence. We are also excited about a new partnership with Grow Your World, which is based in Chapel Hill, that's been doing work around equity for the last 1.5 years and really leans into social emotional health. So there's an opportunity here for some really cool new partnerships, but we have to recognize that folks cannot take advantage of opportunities unless they feel emotionally safe. And so we really have to dig deep over the next 12 months to help our families self-regulate again.
Yeah, Julie, you said an awful lot there. I really appreciate your articulating the social emotional needs of our community. Any of us who are human, and we adults, but I have 2 kids of my own, and look, we have a lot of privilege over here, and there's a lot of trauma that goes along with this pandemic. The isolation and the inability to be a child during this is hard, and then you ratchet that up to the pressures that already exist when one is in poverty, and you ratchet that up when you think about domestic violence and sheltering in place and all of these things. It really is. I think one of the biggest challenges of this whole thing. It's obviously we tend to think of feeding people and getting as a basic need, and we too often think about mental health as some kind of a luxury, and it isn't. We need to be really doubling and tripling down on those on the social and emotional health of this community. So kudos to you both, Donna and Julie, for your work on that front and for your work in general. This has been a great pleasure to chat. I'm going to open it up now to the chat and see if anybody has any questions. Devin, I don't know if anybody has posted anything in the chat, but please do. And any questions for anyone, or just call it out. We don't have that big a group here, so we can talk like grown-ups. Any questions for Donna or Julie or myself?
Nobody's posted any questions yet, but I do have a couple. I'll kick it off if you guys don't mind. So one, I'd love to hear what both of your organizations are doing for Giving Tuesday. You guys have talked about how much of a collaborative effort the support and relief process is during this pandemic, and obviously, like, Giving Tuesday is all about giving to the organizations that that are so influential in your region that are doing great work. So I'd love to hear about that. And then my second question is specifically for Julie. Julie, I love hearing you talk about the social, emotional health and the long-term effects that this period is having on the young people in our community. It's such a devastating part of the pandemic that I think is often overlooked in the broader conversation because there are so many traumatic parts of this experience that we're all having. And I was wondering if there's a particular instance from this year that you can point to that's affected the young people that DCI works with, or if it's really just everything combined.
Sure, I can start with that, and then we can talk about Given Tuesday if that's okay. I think, everything that happened over the summer in terms of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and just the inability for us to look away from systemic injustice has deeply impacted our young people as well as adults throughout our country. But I think that our young people, their lives are still evolving, and the reality, the loud reality of some of the injustices that they were going to face as Black and brown young people is crushing. It's very desensitizing to continue to see violence perpetrated against people that look like your uncle and your aunt and your mother and your father. I was in a Latinx Challenges training over the summer and we were looking at historical images of slavery. And I remember thinking, like, I see this through a white person's eyes. I never look at this and think that could have been my dad. And so I think our young people are really wrestling with who we are now as a country and who they want this country to become and what their role is. And I think that we're looking to them to be the change, really to be the change. And that's a lot of pressure when they also feel emotionally and socially isolated. I think also the reality of the learning loss is going to be a gut punch to our young people. When they walk back into schools, we anticipate they're going to be so excited socially to be with their friends again. But then the reality of what they've lost and how far behind they are because of their inability to stay connected is going to be another punch for them. So, we've got to rally. We really do have to rally. We can't just continue, like I said, to offer interventions. We have to stop and ask young people, how are you doing? We need to value those conversations as much as we value them being productive in any other capacity. DCI is not the only organization focused on this. Any youth serving organization, knows that this is the key. And so we're going to be learning from each other. There are fantastic educators out there who are doing great work with young people, and we need to learn from them how they've taken care of their young people through virtual learning, and hope to be able to translate that out so that we can share with our partners throughout our community the best ways to support young people.
Yeah, organizations that are wrestling with those same things, not only with the youth, but with the adults too. I think about our organization and being a Black-led organization at this point, and having now within the last 8 months, we are now 75% Black staff. And that being such a significant change for us and our member base, and what that looks like in the middle of a pandemic, and really wrestling with what does that mean? How do we represent that? How does that feel to our community? We are also participating in Giving Tuesday. So when people go to our website, our donations are doubled today. And so I put our link in the chat. But yeah, as a staff, we've been really wrestling with what does it mean to be a Black-led organization, and having those intense conversations on top of worrying about people's health, worrying about the disparities in our community, thinking about things like the digital divide. Imagine what that was like when everything shut down, and to think of how people can access services and how many services even right now are still not in person, and how are people able to connect to those services. It is harder, it is different. And how can we be an organization that is supporting people being able to do that, has really been important for us.
Thank you both for that so much. We have another question that came through the chat, not for me this time. So Joe wants to know, are there lessons learned from COVID-19 that will stick with both of your organizations after we're done with the pandemic?
I think for me, it's thinking about health, and it's thinking about what does it mean to make sure people are healthy, and thinking about the fact of creating an environment where if people are not well, that should be the norm of not being there, not to push through. I think that's really important, and I don't think we really thought about it before, in that way. And so encouraging people to make sure that they are being well for themselves, but also being well for our community may mean that you are not in that office. Um, so I think that that has been something that I think definitely will carry on. I also think being flexible and realizing that there are ways to pivot, um, that can be done for lots of situations. You have to be intentional about it, and you have to really think about who it's affecting and why, and how you want to be represented when you're doing that. But the ability to be flexible, I think, is something that we never thought about before either.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll lift up one of the greatest outcomes from COVID for us was, like I said earlier, we used some of our money from Duke to put young people to work, and we challenged them to save 10% of everything that they made, with the ability to match them at the end of working for 4 months. And we put it out there because we as an organization value asset development so much, as the Community Empowerment Fund does. We know that that's the real autonomy, is financial assets. And we were blown away. Our young people not only were able to save 10%, they saved combined over $25,000. Over an average of 55% of every dollar they made, they put in a savings account, which just reinforces everything that we've always known from the work at Prosperity Now about when people are given the tools and the education around savings, that even during crisis, even during a pandemic, that they will make good decisions with their money to be able to take care of themselves in the future. And so we really look forward to sharing those results with the broader community so that we can think about asset development in a more tangible way.
Wonderful. So I have one final question, then we're going to wrap it up here. But Donna and Julie, if you could just briefly share how you all are taking care of yourselves and the teams that you work with. What does that look like? Because I think sometimes we in this business are always talking about helping everybody else. And what's your own self-care look like?
I think for me, it's, I also have a teenager at home with digital learning. And so it's valuing the fact that we have more time together now, because of that. I also have a coach that I am in contact with twice a month. We as a staff are doing caucusing. We have a white caucus and a Black Indigenous people. That's really important to me. We're having those difficult conversations, but we also, some Fridays we are gathering as a group and in social distancing and having fun, and just being glad that we are an organization that is still here, is still connecting with our community, loves our work. And so, yeah, I think that's been the ways of where definitely that self-care for me is important. I take on a lot as a person. So
Yes, you do.
being able to have that self-care. I have a staff that has the ability to say, hey, you need to take that day off. Okay. And that is a good place. I truly believe that the changes that I've seen with this pandemic and the way that my staff has showed up, not only for me, but for our community, has been hugely important. And I'm just always grateful, just always grateful.
How about you, Julie? I know how hard you work too.
Yeah, I am. I'm lucky now that I work under leadership and I'm not the ED anymore, because I'm not the greatest at self-care, because we're just, I mean, the work we do is real work. It's real people, right? It's really, really hard to step away and take care of yourself. But thank goodness David is a great leader, and particularly been focused on our frontline staff being able to step away from their work because they carry such an intense load, having those direct conversations with families. And actually, this is probably the first day I've worked inside. I have made my office my front porch, so I spend most of my days outside, which has kept me healthy.
That's good. Yeah, the vitamin D is important, isn't it? Julie, Donna, this has been an inspiring conversation. We are at close to time here, so I'm going to wrap us up. Just a few things. It is Giving Tuesday, and both Julie and Donna mentioned their organizations. United Way is also, raising dollars to support good organizations like this. We support 85 organizations through our, like these two, through our Community Impact Fund. We supported over 100 organizations through our Rapid Response Fund. So you can go to unitedway-triangle.org/giving-Tuesday if you'd like to give to us, and please give to Community Empowerment Fund and to DCI as well, and to any of those 85 organizations. We have so much trust in the work that you do. We're so honored to be partnering with you both and with 85 organizations. I appreciate the work and how it was articulated around, our mission at United Way is to eradicate poverty and increase social mobility through the power of partnerships. And I recognize that is a damn near impossible mission statement, but I have so much faith in the partners, and you all as partners, and in every one of our partners. We have a tremendous amount of trust in our ability to do this. And it's because of leadership like you. So thank you from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of the organization. And the final point I'll make is, and this was said throughout, but we are an anti-poverty organization, and we cannot be an anti-poverty organization if we are not going to be an anti-racist organization. So in the clearest possible terms, the journey that we are on is one of anti-racism, and the systems that exist and that we are, the water that we are all swimming in, we all need to be working at fixing that. It's not about fixing people, it's about fixing systems, and we need to do that together. And I'm just so honored to be doing that with you, Julie and Donna. Thank you, Devin, for your teamwork and support, and have a great Giving Tuesday, and let's keep moving forward.